Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
Welcome to the first baseball podcast in the Southern Section. Tommy Morris here. And Les, I will let you tell the people who you are.
Hey, Tommy, thanks for having me. Les Lukach, State Scouting Director for Prep Baseball Report, California. Happy to be a part of this program with you this year.
And Les, if you're a baseball player, you'll probably see him at one of your games at some point. He tries to get to everything. How many baseball games do you think you see during the season? A million?
Too many. 6 total last week, about 8 total the week before that. So it's been about 50 games, 40 to 50 games since the start of January.
So he is everywhere. So again, if you're at games, you see him sitting in the stands. That's who he is. Les, I'm going to let you start right away and get to your top 10 in the Southern Section this week.
Yeah. Well, starting at the top is El Toro, coming off a big win in their preseason tournament. Led by Eric Tolman, who should be a pretty high draft pick. Cal Poly slow commit. They're not a one-trick pony though. They're really, really good. Number 2, Sherman Oaks, Notre Dame. They're loaded in the underclass. The 2020 class in particular, 2019 class is pretty stout too. La Mirada coming in at number 3. The Matadors, led by head coach Jimmy Zern, are playing really good ball. They've got some really talented players. Harvard Westlake, number 4, who saw the Wolverines yesterday. We'll talk about one of their players here in a bit, but Wolverines, a traditional power here in Southern California, and this year should be no different for them. Ayala checking in at number 5. Head coach Chris Vogt has probably his best team that he's had since he's been the head guy there. Lots of talent for them. Huntington Beach checking in at number 6. They're 6-2. Their only 2 losses are to a team from San Jose, Bellarmine Prep. So they're 6-0 against the Southern California teams. And last time they did that, they were number 1 in the country a few years ago. Corona checking in at number 7. Head coach Andy Wise has got a really good program going right now. That team right now is playing really good ball. We'll preview them in one of our games of the week here in a bit, but they're loaded with young talent too. So Panthers should be really, really good. Checking in number 8 is Servite. Friars head coach Sean Gilbert has probably his best team that he's had since he's been the head coach there, and they're playing really good ball right now. Had a slight hiccup against a pretty good Fountain Valley team a couple weeks ago, but the Friars are playing really good baseball right now. Mission Viejo comes in at number 9. Head coach Chris Ashback has, again, another really good team. They won CIF a couple years ago, and they look to make some noise in the South Coast League this year. And rounding out the top 10 is West Ranch. Head coach Casey Burrell. He's got, again, another really good team led by Chambers there. And they're going to be a pretty good team. They're going to be a really tough team to beat up in that area.
Yeah, and so I know it's still very early in the season, but is there any team in your top 10 that has really surprised you as being a lot stronger than you thought? Again, granted, there's only been 5 games each team, but who has been the one that stuck out to you the most?
I'd say Corona. They lost a lot of talent last year from last year's team that made a run. They lost 2 of their top pitchers. Despite that, they're 6-1. Coach Andy Wise has got that team believing that they can compete. I saw them against Riverside Poly a couple weeks ago, and again, we talk about youth. They got a freshman, a couple sophomores, but they're senior laden on the mound. But those seniors didn't get a lot of action because the top 2 guys that moved on, one's at St. Mary's, one's at Stanford, both pitching really well at those 2 programs. So if there's a surprise there, I'd have to say it's Corona, just because, again, Coach Andy Wise and the Panthers lost a lot of talent from last year's team, especially on the mound.
All right, so Corona reloading and ready to go for 2018. Now we're going to get into some guys who had some good weeks last week. We're going to kind of lump week 1 and week 2 together because it is the start of the season. I'm going to give a few guys that stood out to me, and then you can kind of give your feedback on a few of the players and then maybe some other players that I have missed. Connor Cox, Aliso, Niguel off the hot start with 3 home runs so far. Will Chambers from West Ranch hitting .524 with 3 home runs and 13 RBIs in his first 7 games. Going back a couple weeks, because as I said, Colin Cortez from Knight had 18 strikeouts in a no-hitter versus Duarte. Very impressive performance there. 18 strikeouts is a lot. If you do the math on that, 3 away from a perfect game. Next, we got Andre Granillo from West Valley, who had 16 strikeouts against Ransom Mirage. And then finally, Lancaster High School. I like the fast guys. They are 65 of 69 as a team stealing bases. Jeremy Holiday and Brandon Stutzman with 14 apiece, and Austin Hilperi with 12. And that is an ungodly amount of stolen bases.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they probably have only played 7 or 8 games. So you're talking about 10 or so steal opportunities in one game per game. That's an absurd amount of steal opportunities or stolen base attempts. But not only that, I mean, it goes to show you their on base percentage must be through the roof too. So those guys are getting some good quality at bats. But I want to go back to Connor Cox. You mentioned him, senior out of Aliso, Niguel, who, he's a little on the underrated side, really good middle infielder, can pick it really well. But, I mean, the bat is projecting really well, so he's off to a good start there. And then you talked about Chambers. They had a big matchup up in Bakersfield last week, where they roughed up a UCLA commit on the mound, and Chambers, took him deep. Those two guys, I think, are going to be names you hear when it comes down to all-state teams, all-area teams for sure. And then you talked about 18 strikeouts in a game. I mean, gosh, that's just, you're right, an ungodly number of strikeouts. One guy I wanted to talk about is Griffin Selby over at Foothill High School here in Santa Ana, and he's just off to a really good start, an uncommitted senior. He's got a chance to be really good on the mound. I saw him a couple weeks ago up to 91. At the plate, he's swinging it really, really well too. So, I mean, there's just so many guys that, in our area, we're spoiled. And you talk about some of those top performances and you go back a couple weeks and I mean, there's just a lot of guys, and, we're lucky in that we don't have to go out and try to recruit all these guys because, I mean, I don't know how these college coaches do it. I mean, there's so many guys. How do you pick and choose? Who do you want to go see?
I know, it's almost like you just kind of go blindfold and throw a dart at a wall, and then whatever happens. But yeah, a ton of talent down here in Southern California. So with that said, there obviously games going on all over the place. We're gonna start with some games from Wednesday, go through Thursday and Friday, and just do some game picks. Again, this is a little more difficult with baseball than it is for the other sports because it depends who's pitching, yada yada yada. But we will do our best. Les, you ready to go?
I'm fired up. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. First game. It is going to happen Wednesday. It's Mission Viejo at Aliso, Niguel.
The league opener for both teams in what should be an incredible South Coast league. With these two teams, we talked about El Toro, number one El Toro's in that league. San Clemente was off to a hot start, and Capo Valley. That league is just stacked. Many people consider it one of the top 2 or 3 leagues in the area. Wins are going to be at a premium, especially when it comes down to, facing these guys. And Mission Viejo lost on Monday in a makeup game against a good Fountain Valley team. Talked to Coach Ashback on Monday night, said he didn't throw his horses, saving them for these league games. This should be an incredible pitching matchup featuring 2 future Pac-12 arms. Will Levine of Arizona State going for Mission Viejo against Ethan Reed, USC commit for Aliso, Niguel. I just really like what Mission Viejo is doing right now, both offensively and on the mound. So I'm going to go with the Diablos in this one.
We'll go the other way. I'm going to go with Aliso, Niguel. They have 9 home runs already as a team. I know it's going to be tough, tough swinging against Mission Viejo, but they got the power there. Next, we've got Santiago going to Corona.
The Big 8, again, one of the best leagues in the area. Nobody really gives them a whole lot of attention. Consistently produces prospects, and we talked about Corona and their youth and their prospects. Santiago has what many people consider to be the top prospect for the MLB draft coming out of Southern California, and Bryce Terang. They've also got a really good pitcher that should be going in this one, and Tyler Frazier. They're also back-to-back league champs. So they've got a lot of things going for them. This is sort of the game that comes down to, who can limit the mistakes. And that nod typically goes to the more experienced team. Because of that, I'm going to go with the Sharks and Santiago on the road here against, our top 10 Corona team.
We're going to disagree again, which is good because, embrace the bait. I got Corona here. They've had a team ERA of 1.14 so far this season. They're at home. I just like them. Again, it's going to be a great game, but I got Corona here. Next, going to Thursday, we have South Hills traveling to Ayala.
Ayala coming off a loss to the aforementioned San Clemente and plays Glendora today in a huge opening game in their league. Bulldogs are loaded with talent and seem to be everybody's darling this year. On the other side, you have South Hills, who, despite not hitting at the level that they're accustomed to, is getting great pitching, which is a nod to first-year head coach Steve Dye, or pitching coach, Steve Dye. This should be a really good pitching duel. In the end, though, I like Ayala's offense here. I think they're going to be a little bit too much for South Hills, so I'm going to go with the Bulldogs on this one.
We'll agree on this one. I've got Ayala as well, hitting 321 as a team, as you mentioned. The Bats, this looks like their game to win. Also on Thursday, we have Great Oak, going to Chaparral.
Great Oak is somewhat young, but that youth is talented. Freshman Carson McKinney, an Alabama commit, went 6 1/3 of no-hit ball last week. Bats are beginning to find their grooves for the Wolfpack. They're playing in that difficult Pirate Classic hosted by Oceanside down in San Diego. Chaparral's coming off 2 straight losses, but they have a win against a really good Glendora team. They also may have an edge on the mound in terms of just overall depth. They're also at home, but I just really like what Great Oak's doing right now as a team, so I'm going to go with the Wolfpack in this one.
I'm going to go with them as well. You mentioned the Bats. Zach Arnold, good start for him as well, hitting 364 with 2 home runs early in this season. Finally, our last game. It is a Friday game. It is Esperanza going to Canyon.
Pitching and offense have been the story for the Aztecs so far. Senior Hayden Winters is just mashing for the Aztecs. Really good football player too. First-year head coach Kyle Mulsteff has these kids believing, they can compete, and they've had some big wins, a couple of them in dramatic fashion. For Canyon, the defense has been a little bit of an issue, and when you're playing a team that likes to put the ball in play, that could work against you. Canyon gets good pitching. They'll have a good shot. I just think the Aztecs offense is hitting at a level that is just too good to pass up right now, so I'm going to go with Esperanza in this one.
I am too. And again, I'm going to say for the 700th time, with all the stats early in the season, take it for what it's worth, small sample size. Sophomore Jason McDonald for Esperanza hitting 600 early in the season. Again, he only has 19 plate appearances, so don't freak out too much. But yeah, just speaking to your point, they put the ball in play and they make you play defense. So Les, where can we find you online? Where are you on Twitter? How about the websites?
Yeah, so our website is prepbaseballreport.com and /California. You can find us on Twitter at PBR_California. I am at Les Lukach. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Check us out. We put out content every day, notes, a lot of free stuff, some subscription stuff. But we do put out a lot of free stuff. We just put out our Players of the Week here today. We'll put out some Diamond Notes throughout the week, which kind of highlights players who have had really good weeks. All that stuff is free content. Again, check us out at prepbaseballreport.com /California or at PBR_California on Twitter.
All right. Thank you, Les. We will both be back here next week with more of the same. We'll see you next time.